That was very loud. The only one that gets special treatment, I get a chair. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Au, and today, on behalf of my team, it is my pleasure to deliver our final briefing on equity in Cloudburst resilience for New York City. This is the agenda I have prepared for everyone today. First, I'll be introducing our team, our client for the semester. Next, I'll go on to discuss what is a cloudburst, our client ask, the research we have conducted, our proposal for the client, as well as some final thoughts to wrap up today's presentation. First of all, I would like to thank my wonderful team right here who has been working tirelessly over the past semester on this project that has really taken us on a ride. I would like to especially thank my deputy manager, Drew V, who has been a pillar of support, as well as our faculty advisor, Nancy Degnan, for her insight and perspective throughout this process. This semester, our team worked with the Division of Integrated Water Management led by Alan Cohn, which is a part of the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. Within the DEP, the division is primarily responsible for creating programs and policies for water conservation, water reuse, and stormwater management. And they have taken on the task of tackling a novel challenge, cloudbursts. The DEP defines cloudbursts as a sudden heavy downpour where a lot of rain falls in a short amount of time. This can then go on to overwhelm infrastructure, housing, and transportation systems. With climate change, New York City is expected to experience more cloudburst events in the near future. One of the most notable examples of cloudbursts in New York City was Hurricane Ida. In September 2021, 3 inches of rain fell over the city in less than an hour, causing intensive floods such as what you can see in the image here. The impact of Ida was significant. It killed 13 people, including a family with a young infant, and most of the victims were from low-income communities of color that were trapped in flooded illegal basement apartments. Ida caused significant property damage, as you can see in the map here, with the hardest hit regions being in the outer boroughs. To put a number to this, Ida caused around $150 million in damages to New York City Housing Authority properties, which served the low-income residents of New York City. Ida was a pivotal event because it revealed that the city is simply not equipped to tackle a novel climate threat like cloudbursts, and it also showed that climate change will impact communities differently, with those hardest hit also likely being the most vulnerable. A holistic approach to tackle cloudbursts comprises both an infrastructure and equity component. On one hand, it's important to update stormwater management infrastructure such that it can withstand intense and sudden rain events. At the same time, the DEP must also understand vulnerabilities of at-risk communities and provide relevant institutional support. On the infrastructure side, the DEP has a plan. Earlier this year, Mayor Eric Adams launched his Cloudburst program along with the DEP. It comprises of $390 million in investments to green infrastructure projects in at-risk neighborhoods across the city. Currently, 3 pilot projects have been initiated in Queens and East Harlem, Manhattan, as denoted in orange on the map here, and 4 more have been selected in Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx for future investments, as denoted in blue. What is currently missing in the DEP's work is the equity aspect. Currently, the department uses this definition by the U.S. Water Alliance to define water equity. There are 3 major components to this definition, but this last bit about resilience in the face of floods, droughts, and other climate risks is especially relevant to cloudbursts. This definition is aspirational, but it lacks a practical direction which the DEP can use to guide their efforts to integrate equity into cloudburst resilience. This is where we come in. This semester, our client has asked us to prepare a set of recommendations to operationalize and measure equity for their current efforts to build cloudburst resilience. To innovate these recommendations, we first started with research. Our team conducted 11 expert interviews with representatives from municipalities, nonprofits, and educational institutions. Through our conversations, we learned various strategies to conduct community engagement, as well as to achieve equity in vulnerable communities. At the same time, we also conducted a literature review of best practices in 6 case study cities that are facing similar challenges of urban flooding as New York City. These cities are Austin, Baltimore, Copenhagen, Mumbai, Portland, and Seattle. From our interviews, we learned that data to understand vulnerability is important, but difficult to quantify and collect. Local leaders can help build trust, which is vital. Solutions should be targeted at a community's needs and capacities. Educational resources and feedback mechanisms should be accessible so all members of the community can participate. And at-risk communities often struggle to access essential resources before, during, and after a cloudburst. Moving on to our case studies. A major through line we notice in several of our cities is the use of key performance indicators or KPIs to measure and assess equity. In Baltimore, Mumbai, and Portland, we also saw a conscious effort to ensure that equity was prioritized in internal government decision-making. Austin and Baltimore also had advisory committees where local leaders could influence government programs and policies. And Baltimore and Mumbai had set up local resilience hub to provide emergency resources during and after natural disasters such as cloudbursts. Finally, from Copenhagen and Mumbai, we saw the importance of collaborations between government agencies to not only build resilience, but also to achieve equity. These findings have shaped our understanding of the equity component in a holistic strategy to tackle cloudbursts. As such, we have developed two main deliverables for our client: an integrated equity strategy, as well as a customizable assessment tool, which can be used to measure and operationalize equity in cloudburst resilience. The integrated equity strategy is a list of programs to achieve equity in different ways. There are four main pillars to the strategy that we have developed: local leadership, which comprises equity advisory committees and ambassador programs; neighborhood engagement, where the needs and feedback of a community are collected through surveys, town halls, and focus groups; critical resource development, where the DEP works closely with other government agencies to establish cloudburst resilience hubs, as well as an insurance scheme and recovery fund; and school partnerships, where the DEP works closely with schools to ensure that local youth are more informed and therefore prepared for cloudbursts in the future, but also establishing an internship and fellowship program to provide educational and career opportunities for students, while also diversifying internal perspectives within the DEP. These four pillars altogether help us build a community-centric approach to cloudburst resilience. At this moment, I would like to go into a little bit more detail and introduce one program in each of our pillars. In local leadership, the borough-specific equity advisory committees are opportunities for local leaders to highlight equity concerns and address unique challenges faced by communities in each borough. These committees will be made up of local leaders as well as government officials who will meet regularly and serve fixed terms. On to neighborhood engagement, focus groups will help provide specific feedback on the specific needs of vulnerable demographics to the DEP, such as the elderly and the disabled. These discussions will be conducted with neighborhood-specific residents and will be done on a voluntary basis. For critical resource development, as I noted before, resilience hubs are a common strategy adopted in several of the case study cities that we looked at. These hubs will provide emergency resources and shelter during cloudbursts and can also be used to conduct community resilience workshops before a cloudburst even occurs. The New York City Housing Authority, or NYCHA, currently actually has a program to retrofit some of their properties to also act as climate resilience hubs. So we recommend the DEP work closely with NYCHA to ensure that these hubs are also equipped with resources for residents to leverage during a cloudburst event. Next, on to school partnerships. As mentioned previously, diversity within an agency is a powerful way to ensure that equity is prioritized within the DEP's work. As such, we recommend the DEP work closely with schools to hire students from at-risk communities through internship and fellowship programs. We recognize that establishing an internship and fellowship program from scratch can be a challenge because it is rather resource intensive. So we actually suggest the DEP leverage existing programs in the city, such as the Urban Fellows Program and the Civil Service Pathways Fellowship Program. On to our assessment tool. This tool was built to allow the DEP to measure and quantify risk for neighborhoods, which is a proxy for vulnerability. With this tool, we hope that the DEP will be able to make more informed decisions on selecting future project neighborhoods, as well as track the effectiveness of cloudburst resilience initiatives that are currently underway and establish relevant KPIs. Our tool is made up of 44 indicators across 4 categories. These are climate change, physical and infrastructure, social and economic vulnerabilities. These indicators were sourced from metrics that are currently being used in our case study cities, equity tools such as the EPA Environmental Justice Screen Tool, as well as the CDC Social Vulnerability Index, as well as other sources such as the New York City DEP and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Within the tool, impact defines specific scenarios to each indicator, and there are 3 levels to impact: low, medium, and high. A score of 1 to 3 is given to each level of impact. Similarly, for likelihood, likelihood actually defines the probability that such a scenario would occur for each indicator. Likelihood is also divided into 3 levels: unlikely, likely, and certain, and a score of 1 to 3 is given to each level respectively. The risk score per indicator can be calculated by multiplying the impact score along with the likelihood score. Put all together, this is a simplified representation of our tool. As you can see, a combination of the impact score and the likelihood score gives us the risk score for an indicator. This in turn informs the risk level for that specific indicator. Over time, as characteristics in a neighborhood change, we anticipate that the risk score and risk level will change as well. To wrap up with some final thoughts, the recommendations that we have developed for the DEP are based on the different definitions and models of equity that we have found through our research. But this is just a starting point. Beyond this, defining and operationalizing equity is a constant work in progress, and the DEP's approach will have to adapt through working closely with communities to understand their evolving needs and address their concerns in line with the DEP's mission. With that, thank you so much for paying attention to my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much for the presentation, Christine. I just had a question about solutions. So in terms, obviously the project was very equity focused, but did you guys have any conversations about deploying like infrastructure-based solutions, so pumps or things of that nature, that you could sort of then have an equity focus there as well? Like, was that a conversation that was had?
So the scope of our project is very equity focused, and our clients specifically wanted to understand how they can engage better with communities that they're planning to roll out these infrastructure projects in. So the DEP actually already has plans on the types of infrastructure they want to roll out, and those are internal decisions that we're not exactly privy to. So because the focus was very oriented on how to kind of elevate communities and to center their concerns in the DEP's overall strategy for Cloudburst, infrastructure was not really within the scope of our investigation and therefore in the project.
Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for the presentation. Great job, you guys. I was curious about something you mentioned in your case study that the majority of deaths in a cloudburst incident can be in basement apartments that are not regulated. So I was just curious about the ability to track something like that in your assessment tool or by the DEP at large. Like, how is something like that incorporated into solutions when it's not necessarily regulated by the city?
That is a really great question, and it's definitely something that we had to wrap our heads around as a team. We understand that the DEP currently has an effort to try and either legalize basement apartments, or at least some of them, or to get a better understanding of this extent of basement apartments in New York City, because that's not very well understood. Based on some of the readings that we've had, estimations of the number of basement apartments in New York City go from 30,000 to like even 400,000 by some advocacy groups. So one way we think understanding basement apartments can be achieved, or how we can do that, is actually through the community surveys that we're recommending the DEP do. These would kind of be similar to census surveys where representatives from the DEP or potentially volunteers or hired staff, they'll go into neighborhoods and really try to understand how many basement apartments are in each neighborhood. And that hopefully will help kind of supplement like the impact as well as the likelihood that we will fill into our tool right here. Definitely the number of basement apartments is a consideration, but like you said, there are a lot of barriers to understanding that. We also recognize that since it is illegal, it's probably unlikely that any property owner is ever going to fess up to the fact that they have an illegal basement apartment within their property. So working with local leaders through the ambassador program and equity advisory committee is very important as well, so that they can have more informal, more intimate conversations with property owners to understand where the basement apartments are and potentially what the vulnerabilities are. Yeah. Thank you.